Steve Harvey was 12 minutes into a live interview on the set of his talk show when a 3-year-old girl named Patience Webb walked through the studio door, looked directly at him across a room full of cameras and crew and production lights, and asked, "Are you sad, Misty?" Steve, not to anyone near her, not as a whisper to her mother, to him, across the room, in a voice that carried the particular clarity of a child who has not yet learned to doubt what she sees. The room went quiet the way rooms go quiet when something true enters them. Steve Harvey, who was mid-sentence about a renovation project, stopped talking. He looked at this 3-year-old girl for a long moment. His jaw shifted once. Then he said, "Baby, come here." She walked to him like she had been waiting to be called. She climbed up onto the interview couch, settled herself next to him, looked up at his face with complete calm, and waited. Steve Harvey pressed his lips together. His eyes went bright and did not clear. He put his arm around her. He said, to the whole room and to nobody in it, "Yeah, baby girl, a little bit." The studio fell completely silent. Patience Webb nodded like she had expected this answer and was satisfied with it. She put her small hand on his arm and kept it there. It was April 3rd, 2019. Nobody on that production team had any idea what they were about to learn about either of them. The interview had been a standard booking, a home renovation show producer named Gloria Webb from Nashville, Tennessee, appearing to discuss a project that had gone viral the previous month. A neighborhood block where she had coordinated free home repairs for 11 elderly residents over a single weekend, organizing 43 volunteers, 6 contractors, and enough donated materials to resurface roofs, replace plumbing, and repaint every house on the street. It had been covered locally, then nationally, then globally in the compressed way things travel now. Gloria had agreed to the interview the way she agreed to most things, quickly, practically, already thinking about what came next. She had brought Patience because her regular sitter had canceled, and she did not cancel things. Patience had sat in the green room with crackers and a coloring book for the first 40 minutes. Then, she had apparently decided she was finished sitting. Nobody had told Patience who Steve Harvey was beyond a man on TV. She had apparently needed no further information. She had walked through that door, assessed the room, and reached a conclusion. But nobody in that studio knew what Gloria Webb had been holding for 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days. Gloria Webb had built her renovation coordination business out of nothing over 6 years, starting with a second-hand truck, a borrowed nail gun, and a spreadsheet she kept on her phone because she could not afford the software. She had grown up watching her grandmother's house in North Nashville deteriorate year by year. A roof that leaked into a pot on the kitchen floor, a furnace that ran $20 a week in propane to produce barely enough heat, a front porch that listed so far to the right that her grandmother had stopped using the front door. Her grandmother had lived in that house for 51 years and had never been able to fix it, not from lack of wanting, from lack of access, the contractors who didn't call back in that neighborhood, the loan officers who found reasons, the city programs with wait lists that stretched longer than the problems they were designed to solve. Her grandmother had died in 2013 in that house, on a Tuesday in January, in a bedroom where you could see your breath. Gloria had gone to the funeral and come back, and within 2 weeks had begun calling every contractor she knew. She told them what she was doing. She told them she had no money to offer yet, but she had a plan, and she needed them to believe in it long enough to show up once. Most of them didn't call back. Enough of them did. She built the business on a particular philosophy: nobody gets on a wait list. If she took a project, she finished it. If she said she'd be there Tuesday, she was there Tuesday, because she knew what it meant to wait and have nobody show. By 2017, she had a team of 12, a real office with real software, and a project backlog that stretched 18 months. She had also, without planning it this way, built something that functioned less like a business and more like a neighborhood institution. A place people called when the system had stopped calling back. Her husband, David, had been her first volunteer. He had shown up with his own tools to her second project, a single mother's collapsing back steps in East Nashville, and spent 8 hours in the cold without asking for anything, and when Gloria had asked him why he came, he said, "Because you asked, and most people don't." They married in 2014. Patience was born in 2015. David was the one who held Patience during the long weekends when a project ran over, and Gloria was still on site at 9 p.m. He was the one who read to her every night and made her oatmeal with exactly the right amount of honey and called Gloria on her drive home so she wouldn't fall asleep at the wheel. He was, by every practical and emotional measure, the structural center of their family. David Webb died on November 16, 2018, 41 years old. A heart attack in the driveway at 7 a.m., between taking out the recycling and getting in his car for work. Patience had been inside eating oatmeal. Gloria had been upstairs. She had heard the bin clatter and looked out the window and seen him down and been outside in 18 seconds and on the phone with 911 in 22 and telling herself to stay calm, telling herself to stay on the phone, telling herself that the 41 seconds until the ambulance arrived was not as long as it felt. It was longer than it felt. David Webb was pronounced at the hospital at 7:52 a.m. Gloria had driven herself home. She had gone inside. She had sat at the kitchen table with Patience's oatmeal bowl still in the middle of it, and she had not moved for a long time. Then she had gotten up and called her team and told them the Tuesday project was going to have to start without her, that she'd be there by afternoon, that everything they needed was in the shared folder. Her team coordinator had said, "Gloria, you can't." Gloria had said, "I'll be there by 2. She was there at 1:30. She had not taken a single day off since November 16, 2018. This was not courage. She would say this later, clearly, without drama. It was not courage. It was the only mechanism she had for not going somewhere she could not come back from. The work was the structure, and the structure was what kept her functional, and functional was what Patience needed. So she worked. She worked through December and January and February, and the projects kept coming because the needs kept coming, and nobody on her team said the wrong thing because they were all, in their various ways, holding their breath around her, doing the work and watching her. Patience watched too. Patience Webb was 3 years old and could not name what she was watching. But she had been watching her mother's face for 5 months with the unfiltered acuity of a small child who does not yet know how to look away from things. She had noticed the way her mother sometimes stopped in the middle of rooms and stood still longer than made sense. She had noticed the oatmeal. She had noticed the mornings her mother sat on the edge of the bed for a very long time before standing up. She had developed, with no coaching and no framework, an instinct for when something was wrong that expressed itself the only way a 3-year-old's instincts can, directly. She asked her stuffed animals if they were sad. She asked her grandmother if she was sad. She asked the checkout woman at the grocery store once, which had made Gloria laugh for the first time in weeks. The kind of laugh that feels like it arrived from somewhere far away and surprised everyone, including the person laughing. And then she walked through a studio door and asked Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey was carrying a secret that would soon change everything. Because Steve Harvey, on April 3, 2019, was 11 days out from the anniversary of his mother's death. Eloise Harvey had died on March 23, 2017. Steve had spoken about her publicly, had mentioned her in interviews, had dedicated work to her memory, but the anniversary still arrived like weather every year, internal and non-negotiable, and this year it had been heavier than the last two. He had not told his team. He had come to work. He had done what Gloria Webb did. He had used the structure of the work to stay functional, and it had worked right up until a 3-year-old girl walked through a door and looked at his face from across a room and saw exactly what was there. When Patience asked, "Are you sad, Mr. Steve?" she was not asking about his mother. She was 3. She was asking because she saw something real, and she asked what she saw. But the word she used, sad, landed in the exact place it would have needed to land. And Steve Harvey's body received it before his mind could decide how to handle it. That was why he said, "Yeah, baby girl." A little bit. He sat with Patience's hand on his arm, and he looked at Gloria Webb and he said, "Can I ask you something?" Gloria said yes. He said, "How long?" She did not ask what he meant. She said, "November." "My husband." The studio fell completely silent. Steve Harvey nodded. He did not say, "I'm sorry." He said, "You drove here today." Gloria said, "I always drive." He said, "By yourself?" She said, "We manage." She said it the way people say things they have said to themselves so many times they have become a kind of wall. Not a lie, not a denial, just a way of staying upright. Steve Harvey looked at this woman and this child, and he said, "I want to tell you something that was told to me." He leaned forward. "A long time ago, I was at a point where I had nothing. No money, no home, no real reason I could articulate for the next morning, and a stranger at a gas station, I didn't know him, never saw him again, said to me, 'God has a plan bigger than your pain.' I wasn't in a place to believe it. But I wrote it down, and I have carried it for 30 years, because it was true even when I couldn't feel it." He looked at Patience. "I think God sent this baby in here today, not for the show, for you. And maybe a little bit for me too." Gloria Webb's chin moved. She pressed her hands flat on her thighs. She did not cry right then. She was a woman who had been not crying for 5 months by sheer structural force. But her face did something that the audience recognized and received, and the studio fell completely silent for the second time. Steve Harvey said, "I want to make a phone call." He called a grief counselor, Dr. Anita Forsyth, a Nashville-based therapist who specialized in traumatic and sudden loss, whom Steve's team had located in the 12 minutes between patients entering the studio and this moment. Dr. Forsyth picked up. Steve Harvey said, "Doctor, I have a woman named Gloria Webb on this stage. She lost her husband 5 months ago. She hasn't stopped working since. Her 3-year-old just told me she looked sad." A pause. "Dr. Forsyth said, she's in survival mode. She's doing the right thing to stay functional, and she will need to feel it eventually. Can I speak with her?" Steve handed Gloria the phone. What happened in the next 6 minutes was not broadcast in the original airing. The producers left Gloria's side of the call in the final cut, but Dr. Forsyth's voice was edited to a murmur, per Dr. Forsyth's privacy protocol. What remained was Gloria Webb, sitting on a couch on national television with her daughter's hand in her lap, saying less and less as the call went on, and then saying, "Okay." And then, "I know." And then, nothing at all for a while. And then, he would have said the same thing. Patience looked at her mother's face for the entire call. She did not fidget. She waited. But Steve wasn't done. When Gloria handed the phone back, Steve Harvey turned to the full studio and said, "This woman spent this past weekend fixing 11 people's houses, 11, by herself. By which I mean with a team she built from nothing because she watched her grandmother's house fall apart and decided it would not happen to someone else on her watch. She has a 2-year wait list of people who need her. She lost her husband 5 months ago and she has not stopped." He looked at the audience. "I need you to understand what that costs. Not the work. The work is her gift. The cost of doing it while carrying what she's carrying." He turned back to Gloria. He said, "What does your team need to get through that waitlist?" Gloria blinked. She was not used to being asked what she needed. She said, "After a moment, we need 2 more trucks and another crew. That's about $60,000 of equipment." Steve Harvey said, "Done." The audience erupted. He waited for it to settle. "And I want to set up a fund for your operational costs for the next 12 months so you can stop doing the math every Monday morning." He turned to the booth. "We're doing this." The producer's voice in his earpiece said something brief. Steve Harvey said, "I know. We're doing it." But Steve wasn't done. He looked at Patience, who had been sitting through all of this with the serene patience her name promised. A child of remarkable composure, utterly unimpressed by television, entirely focused on the adults around her. Steve Harvey said, "Patience, I want to ask you something." She looked at him. He said, "Why did you ask me if I was sad?" Patience considered this with the gravity of a 3-year-old presented with a serious question. She said, "Because your face looked like Mommy's face sometimes." The studio fell completely silent for the 3rd time. Steve Harvey looked at the ceiling for a moment. His shoulders moved. He said, when he came back down, out of the mouths of babes, he addressed the camera directly. "If you are watching at home, and you are going through something you have decided to just push through because there is no other option, I want you to hear this child. Because she just said what none of us have the nerve to say to each other." He held up Dr. Forsyth's number on a card. "Grief does not have an expiration date. Functioning is not the same as healing. And if a 3-year-old can see it, you can say it out loud." He paused. "Someone in your life right now has that face. Go check on them." The episode, a talk show segment that was never supposed to be more than a 7-minute feature on a community project, aired the following week. In the first 24 hours, it was viewed 260 million times. By 72 hours, the number was 390 million. The hashtag #HerFaceIsTired trended globally for 9 days and became the unexpected language for a conversation about grief, functionality, and the particular invisible suffering of people who keep working. Crisis counselors in 5 countries reported spikes in voluntary help seeking calls in the week following the episode, spikes they directly attributed to the clip. Steve Harvey appeared on CBS This Morning 10 days later and was asked what he remembered most about that day. He said, "A 3-year-old walked across a room and saw me. Really saw me. In 30 years of television, through every extraordinary thing that has happened on a stage, I have never felt more seen than in the 3 seconds it took that baby to cross that room and ask me one question." He paused. "I think about it every day." Gloria Webb received 2 trucks and a full operations fund within the week. She hired 2 additional crews. Within 6 months, she had cleared 14 months off her waitlist. Within a year, her model had been adopted by 4 cities, Birmingham, Memphis, Louisville, and Richmond, under a program she helped design and train. She appeared before a Senate Housing Subcommittee in 2020 to testify on neighborhood infrastructure repair access. She brought Patience. Patience sat in the Senate gallery with her grandmother and colored quietly for most of the hearing. At one point, she looked up at the room full of senators and said to her grandmother, in a voice that carried, "Why do they all look tired?" Her grandmother covered her mouth. Several members of the gallery did not. The Patience Web Community Repair Fund, named at Steve Harvey's insistence, over Gloria's initial protest that it should be named after David, launched in the fall of 2019. In its first year, it funded home repairs for over 400 families in 6 cities, 0 waitlist, all completed within 90 days of intake. It maintained a grief support partnership with Dr. Forsyth's practice, available to all program participants and volunteers, because Gloria had decided that you could not fix someone's house without also considering what was happening inside it. David Webb's name appears on the foundation's founding wall in Nashville. The inscription below it reads, "Because you asked, and most people don't." Gloria Webb went to her first therapy session on April 17, 2019, 14 days after the taping. She has described the 14 days between the taping and the first session as the 2 hardest weeks of the whole year, because Patience had cracked something open on that couch, and there was no putting it back. She said, "I went to work every day. But I was different. Something had moved." She has been in therapy since. She says it is the second most useful thing she has ever done. The first is the work. Patience Webb is in kindergarten now. She still asks people if they are sad. Her teacher has noted it in 2 parent conferences as something between a challenge and a gift, and has landed, definitively, on gift. Gloria has stopped trying to explain it and has started simply watching it. Watching her daughter move through rooms and read faces and ask the direct question that the rest of us swallow, and thinking, she got that from somewhere. She got it from watching. The most important things are usually the simplest ones. A 3-year-old does not have the vocabulary for grief or resilience or invisible suffering or survival mode. What she has is eyes, and the courage to use them, and the belief, not yet argued out of her by the world, that if she sees something real, she is allowed to say it. Patience Webb walked across a room and asked one question, and changed 2 people's lives, and reminded 200 million strangers that functioning is not the same as fine. The question was 4 words. The answer changed everything. If someone in your life has that face right now, go ask them. Don't wait for a 3-year-old to do it first. Share this if it stayed with you. And subscribe, because every week we find the moment that changes how you see the people standing right next to you.